I'm delighted to be joined on the Alternative Show today by Athens band Monogram X. They're here to chat about the band and play us some songs. Hello, how are you today?
Oh, hi Chris. We're fine, thank you. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Oh, good, great.
To start off with, can you tell us where you're based, who's in the band and what everyone does in it?
Basically, Monogram X is a duet that Josephine and I formed sometime in 2019 in Athens, Greece. In fact, the band consists of me and Joe, but we also use session musicians for the recordings or for the live gigs that are about to come later on this year. We actually both co-write our songs, and even though Joe writes the lyrics and sings, and I do the arrangements and play most of the instruments, we both have a say regarding what the other one does, you know. Fortunately though, we almost always have the same outlook concerning the songs and how they should sound after all, which is a godsend for me.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah, it is.
How did it all start? Where did you meet and how did the band come about?
So I had just finished university, and university was the reason why my high school band got split up. So I finished art school, and then I realized that I missed music too much, and I was searching for something to do musically, but I wanted it to be meaningful and not nothing that I would only make money from, because I think that's too easy nowadays. And so somehow fate brought it so that I met George and we started making music, and I think it was one of the best choices that I've made.
Okay, perfect. George, did you want to add to that?
I was actually looking for a female singer, lyricist, to start an English-speaking project for quite some time. And to this end, I had auditioned a few singers, but couldn't really find what I was looking for. She had to have some certain qualities as a singer, but as a person as well. And perhaps this is why it wasn't such an easy task for me. And then one day, I was introduced to Joe, we had a chat or two, and gave her a scratch track for a song of mine. And she came back a few days later with her own lyrics and a voice she had recorded at home. And by then I was convinced that she was the one I was looking for, and I really feel very lucky for this. In the end, as we all know, communication is key, so I'm really happy this was quite apparent in our case. Actually, this is the story of meeting Joe.
It's a good story, okay. And who thought of the name Monogram X and why did you choose it?
Oh, yeah. Good question, yeah. It was that day when, as part of our endless conversations we had in the studio, we ended up reading a poem called Monogram, written by the Nobel Prize winner Greek poet Odysseus Elitis. I remember that we were both blown away and deeply, deeply touched by the strong emotions jumping, from his words, as well as from, let's say, the kind of accelerating rhythm and the crescendo of his writing. It was amazing. We both felt that we were so connected to it that when a little later we were thinking about the name of the band, Monogram was an obvious choice for us. After all, monogram is a Greek word. This fact actually contributed to that somehow. Well, if you ask me about the X, it's simply the unknown factor, the actual beauty of life, let's say. So this is how the Monogram X name, how we chose it,
I think it's a fabulous name, and the X really adds an element for me of mystery about it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great story. You've got 3 songs to play for us. What's your first choice and why have you chosen it?
So our first song choice is Black Hole. It's the 3rd song from the album, and it's a song about embracing the feeling of sadness. And I really felt the need to write a song about that when I realized that there is nothing wrong with feeling sad, and there's no need to try to scrutinize it and try to push it away the moment it comes. And please don't get me wrong about this. I don't mean that we have to take sadness very seriously, but feelings are just like, little kids. They want your attention. And if we just let them speak, they can show us the way we have to go. And the way can be really beautiful, no matter how dark, just like the night sky.
I think there's a black hole in my heart, so white the air is blowing through, and every day the emptiness is growing. I think there's a black hole in my heart, it's feeding on my stupid emotions, and I can tell I'm running out of joy. Oh, my head is kinda dark, I know that. I guess you know the reason why. Everything nice comes at a price. Intoxication. I'm not giving up, I'm just giving in, 'cause I'm fucking sick of trying to smile. Why should I always hide away my sadness? Oh, my head is kinda dark, I know that, and you can see it in my eyes. Everything nice comes at a price. Oh, my head is kinda dark, yeah, I know, but if only you could see the view. Oh, I can see the stars shining through. Oh, it never felt so good to be blue. Oh, it never felt so good to be blue.
How would you describe the band's sound?
Well, first of all, I would say electric ballads with no frontiers. Seems like an apt description of our songs to me, irrespective of whether it is of a slow or an up-tempo variety. Personally, even though I started as a rock and roll fan in my childhood, as everyone did it back then, I have also listened to, been impressed or touched by many different kinds of music, partly due to my traveling to many places all over the world and all that. And of course, as it is quite obvious, I guess, traditional music from all around the Mediterranean Sea has been a major influence for me as well. So all those influences together jump out here and there when I compose or arrange songs. But I believe that this whole procedure becomes unconscious during the creative process anyway. So the result is, let's say, some kind of free and fluid palette of sounds that is influenced or, let's say, driven mostly by the emotions created by the lyrics and the song itself. So the song and the lyrics actually dictate the sound, the actual sound that you can hear in this album anyway. Well, I hope it all makes sense. It makes sense to me anyway. I don't know.
Yes, it all made total sense. It's really an answer that totally reflects where you're from, for sure. What's the songwriting process for the band?
Well, let me answer this one. Well, it's either Joe most of the times or me who bring a first idea in the studio, where we then both work on it, developing the various bits and pieces regarding melody or the chord progression, the lyrics or the basic structure of the song. And from there on, we usually record the first scratch track with just a guitar and a voice. Well, this process could take anything from a couple of days to 1 week or even more sometimes. And it actually ends when we both feel that the song kind of, vibrates as a whole. This is the critical point where the actual arrangement stage begins. And the song writing stage ends, actually. But there were times, though, when we had to change parts of the song, even at the later stage. There are no restrictions on that. But more or less, this is how we write our songs.
Okay. Joe, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yes, I felt like I need to answer this on my part too about the lyrics. I write down my ideas like literally anywhere, like in the bus, while walking. I get up in the middle of the night. I even get out of the shower halfway sometimes to write down this one lyric because it just never stays in my head for too long, and I've got to be very careful. So then I bring my notes to the studio, and that's where it all magically comes together into something that actually makes sense, because it doesn't before I bring it there most of the time. So yeah, that's just about it.
Perfect. Okay. Do your songs have any consistent lyrical themes?
I like to write about the things that I find it the hardest to cope with, like loneliness or losing my way, or just the process of trying to figure out what it is that I'm feeling. This whole, shipwreck of emotions, and then try to untie the whole thing at the end of the song. So to me, you could say that songwriting is literally therapy. So that's why I don't go to therapy. And I remember writing the lyrics for Far Too Long, the first song from In the Right Place, and it was like 2 years later or so that I found out it was not just describing my emotions at the time, but it was actually showing me my way out of a really tough situation I was in back then. Well, better late than ever. So, but sometimes I do find a silver lining though, and that's where the more hopeful songs come along, like Unicorns and Planet People. But these two took a long time to write and a lot of experimentation. I think that happy songs are the hardest ones to write. Like, if you start laughing in the train for no apparent reason, other people will start staring or even, question your sanity. And it's just a feeling that I think needs to be backed up. So, thanks, George.
Perfect. Okay. Which recording studio did you use to record your album In the Right Place, and why did you choose that particular studio?
I happen to have my own fully equipped recording studio here in Athens, called Paraktio. You see, I was working as a producer with Virgin Records in the 90s, and I've been working as a freelancer since Virgin Greek Brands was sold to EMI in the early 2000s. So I have the studio since back then, anyway. So having our own high-end studio actually covers all of our needs, and therefore gives us, the luxury of working in such a first-class environment from the very start, which is a big bonus for us, of course. So as I see it, let's say given luxury or something. Thanks God.
Perfect. Okay. And what approach did you use when you were recording the album?
As I mentioned earlier, I usually start getting into the arranging stage for a song by first choosing the main instruments and sounds from the moment we are actually able to play it with just the guitar and the voice, when the song is at its basic form. But there were other times where a certain sound, guitar or a synth riff, for example, has worked as the foundation for getting us in the right mood. Could be anything, really. In fact, this is the turning point in finding where the song should be headed to. Finding the right mood for each song, I mean.
Yeah.
In most of the songs, I worked on the rhythm section first, programming a mock-up before I brought in a real drummer to play. On some others, I decided that programming and keeping the drums or percussion parts was a better choice in order to get the desired mood. So even in the production stage, I had no, conceptions, let's say, on how things should be done. Whatever worked at the moment. We are also lucky enough to have quite a large assortment of real instruments around in the studio, so I could experiment with them whenever I felt like, which is a bonus too. There were also some really good musicians, French musicians of mine, who played in some of the songs, and I'm very happy with their contribution to the final result. So as a final word in answering your question, I would say that the way I approached this song was that of a little individual movie soundtrack, that kind of approach, with, where each song has its own atmosphere and inner emotions and all that. So it was all a matter of just using whatever instrument or sound or musical part I thought that was appropriate for achieving this task. And this last bit, I believe, was the core of approaching the production of this album as a whole.
Okay, and how was the recording process for you, Joe?
So what happens is that first I like to write the leading vocals, not exactly the leading vocals, but a guide.
Yeah.
And sometimes the very first recording that I do is what stays. And I remember recording Far Too Long, which was, I think, about the very first song that I initiated, but the second one out of all 9 from the album. And I remember I was sick and I was starting to feel better, and I was in the studio before COVID, of course, and I was feeling still a little bit under the weather, and we did a recording, and then I was like, oh no, I have a stuffy nose, it sounds so bad, I want to re-record it. And George was always like, no, the first take is the best one. And I was trying for 2 months to sing it better, and I just couldn't. It was the first one that just had this vibe that we needed. So sometimes, it's the very first one. But sometimes, we try again and again to figure it out. In the case of Wish I Was a Mountain, which is the last one, it took a very long while until I figured out how to sing it. So it was the backing vocals first, I think, and then the actual final part. Every song is completely different, but I really love to get in the booth and recording. It's my favorite part of it.
It sounds like a kind of structured, organic process, which I like a lot. As a producer myself, I'm with George. I have my little trick that I usually say, let's do a warm-up vocal and always record it, because take one's always the best. What about things like the track listing order and the cover? Is that decided jointly between the two of you?
Yeah, we decided that the order of the songs, we decided together. It took a long while. We had to revision it every now and then. And so was the cover, because it's hand drawn. But I've also designed potential album artwork for vinyl, which is going to happen soon.
Yeah.
And it has a whole booklet with all the lyrics inside, and this took such a long time. I'm so proud of it, and I really can't wait for the vinyls to be pressed and ready for the world to buy them. But yeah, everything was a very long process. We would always have to revision everything, and good things take time. But it was very hard for me because I'm not a patient person. I'm very impatient and I get very enthusiastic all of the time. So it was one of the hardest things for me. Very painful.
Joe, I see you play the ukulele. Why did you choose to learn to play that instrument?
It's cheaper than therapy. Okay, so I've said that before, but university was the reason why my high school band split up, and I was so heartbroken. So while I was in university, in art school, I wanted to play an instrument that I could have with me at all times and cheer myself up a little. And I seem to always write songs when I feel depressed and hopeless, and that happens more often than I'd like to admit. But that's exactly what I love the most about songwriting. It doesn't just show me the way, it is the way.
Any plans to do a solo album just with you and the ukulele?
Well, if George approves, I've signed a contract. I don't know what happens next. If he's gonna chase me with lawyers and stuff, I don't know.
I might let her do it.
Okay, we've come to your second song choice, so can you tell us what it is and why you've chosen it?
So it has to be Planet People, because it's like the center of the whole album. It's the very heart of it, and every song of the album just orbits around it. It's a song of hope, and I just can't live in a world where hope isn't there.
Who are you when you're the only one around? Where are you when you are nowhere to be found? Who are we when we lose all that we love? And where are we when there is nowhere we belong?
What's your hope and aspirations for your music?
Well, my hope is to create more hope, like a candle flame. You don't have less hope when you share it with others. And I want to write music that makes people feel like it's okay to feel the way you do, because only by feeling can we understand, and only if we understand can we move on. It's like I want to give a big musical hug to as many people as possible, even if it means we cry in the process.
Okay, thank you. George?
Oh, well, yeah. To me, the Atmos goal would be for our songs to be heard by those that they were made for. And if you ask me who these are, I would say it's people who would like to follow us and share in this musical journey of ours. As simple as that, you know. It's also playing live in front of such an audience is the obvious next goal, and it's something we are both really looking forward to.
Okay, and anything else that's next for the band this year? Any other plans?
Well, first and foremost is to put together the band that will follow us at the live gigs. Something that we are hoping to get started on sometime in the autumn, probably somewhere there. Finishing the 2 video clips for Black Hole and Planet People is also on the to-do list. And the vinyl, of course, which is something we are looking forward to very much, you know.
Yeah. Okay. What interests or hobbies do you have outside of the band?
Well, I like yoga and I work at home. I like baking and making toys for my cat.
And for George. Yeah.
I don't make toys for you, but I bake for you sometimes.
That's what I mean.
Ooh, what's your speciality bake?
Brownies
Cheesecake.
and cheesecake.
Perfect. Okay, George?
What I mostly enjoy doing when I'm not in the studio has always been and still is traveling around the world. Traveling. To me, it's like recharging my batteries or getting some fresh air, you know, somehow.
Yeah.
With every trip you take, you get new images, but you also get a slightly better perspective of all these elements that our world is made up of. And this is very important to me, and at the same time it's fun. Most of the times, at least, it is.
Okay, perfect. What's your final song choice tonight and why?
Our final song choice is Song of the Ashes. Song of the Ashes is a song born of fire, quite literally. It's like a dream, but it's in backwards. My mind has created an oddly specific place that most of my nightmares take place, and that's what starts the song, waking up in nightmare land again. But the difference is that when I wake up from a nightmare, I'm usually quite happy because it's over. So it's like a fairy tale taking place in the real world where you and I are the main characters, but it's told halfway through. So you and I have to figure out our way towards the happy ending, and it's not a fairy tale because it's about us and what we do in this world.
Thank you very much. It's a fantastic song as well. It really is. Very, very good.
Thank you. We really appreciate this, Chris.
Yeah, thanks.
You're very welcome. Okay. Thanks for joining me today. Let's keep in touch. That was Josephine and George from Monogram X, and this is their latest single release, Song of the Ashes.
Waking up in nightmare land again. There's nothing